Andretti has been the most vocal of all the new F1 team applicants to become the new team on the grid and to take up the 11th spot. Andretti Autosports are a real deal motorsport racing company that are competing and winning in other series such as Formula E and IndyCar. And having the Andretti name in motorsport is fantastic, but to have that Andretti name back in Formula One would be absolutely fantastic. They also have the backing of General Motors, who have chosen to use their Cadillac brand as the name they're going to use to support Andretti moving forward. So they've got the motorsport and racing pedigree, they've got the legendary Andretti name, they've got the finances, they've got the backing. So what's stopping them? So let's take a look and find out what's the deal with Andretti Cadillac. And just before we go forward, make sure you click subscribe so you can stay up to date with any new content. So currently in F1, any new team that's looking to come onto the grid has to pay what's called an anti-dilution fee of $200 million. And this is set up to compensate any of the existing teams on the grid for losing a piece of the pie, shall we say, in F1, as it now has to be split 11 ways rather than 10. I mean, this sounds dodgy already, but trust me, it gets even dodgier. Thankfully, through the backing of General Motors, Andretti should easily be able to cough up the dough, leap over this hurdle, and get onto the grid, no problems. You would think so anyway. They are the most legitimate entry of all the F1 team proposals that the FIA received, and now that the FIA has declined a further 3, they are the only one now left standing. I mean, Michael Andretti, who's running this whole thing, has been so vocal and so ambitious about how the team can come into F1, be competitive, and add value to the sport, particularly in the United States. And to be absolutely honest, I believe him. I do think that they are deadly serious about this, and they can actually come into the sport, not be backmarkers first of all, and they can make an impact. And this is where General Motors being on board is so good, because their financial backing will allow Andretti to make an attempt to really do this properly, not on a shoestring budget, and try and be competitive and ruffle a few feathers on the grid. And maybe that's what the current crop of teams are a bit worried about. Unlike Haas, the only other American team on the grid right now, Andretti are going to be an entirely American operation. They're not going to have any little satellite offices or factories in any other countries. All the cars are going to be built in Indianapolis. They'll operate everything out of the USA, and they can actually label themselves as the true American F1 team. I'm not knocking you, Haas, I still love you guys. And this whole being a true American team, this is going to present all sorts of commercial opportunities that might not currently be available to the current 10 teams on the grid. Also, if you're one of my American viewers, please let me know in the comments if you think having an entirely American team on the grid is going to make a difference or have any kind of effect in the F1 community over there in the States. If all goes well and they are accepted to join the grid, Michael Andretti has said that the new team will be ready to be on the grid for 2025, although that could possibly be 2026. But either way, for us the fans, this represents some really great new things. This will give us 2 additional seats available on the grid, which is a great chance to see some new faces and some new drivers. An entirely new team full of new personnel, and also some job opportunities if you want to get into F1. Also just some new colours, some new sponsors, some new names, and just a breath of fresh air in a sport that, whilst I'm really passionate about, it has gotten a bit predictable and a bit samey. Now, if you're a team principal like Toto Wolff or Christian Horner, you absolutely love predictable and samey. It's your favourite thing in the world. You know your competition inside and out, and you know exactly what you're going to be dealing with on race weekends. So for them, this unknown entity coming onto the grid, who is going to be diluting their share of the prize money, and which is not their God-given right to have, by the way, is bound to have them concerned. You know, I've been an F1 fan for a long time now, and I've never witnessed such pushback and negativity against a new team trying to join the grid and get a slot from the existing bunch. And I have a feeling that this pushback and negativity has got something to do with the fact that their entry is not currently linked to any team or entity currently in Formula One. I mean, if they had done what Haas did and came into F1 with a direct tie-up with, say, Ferrari or even Mercedes or Alpine, it probably would have been done and dusted by now. It would have been announced and there'd be a confirmed 11th team. I mean, Helmut Marko said that Andretti should just buy out Alpine's slot on the grid as a sure way of guaranteeing them a spot on the grid. But you would love that then, wouldn't you, Helmut? Because then it would just be an Alpine with an Andretti badge slapped on it. And then it's not a threat to the hierarchy then, is it? Because then it's going to be a French and American partnership that will succeed as much as French and American partnerships normally do, which is never. But yeah, there have been rumours of Andretti potentially using Alpine engines to get started, but I hope with the GM backing, this will then evolve into GM manufacturing their own engine and just becoming a completely independent operation. But yeah, all of this is rumours and none of it's been confirmed. So I'm not surprised Michael Andretti has rejected what Helmut said, because he's sticking to his guns. He doesn't want to dilute anything. He wants that 11th spot on the grid. So, you know, already I'm kind of liking this guy. I mean, Toto Wolff even made the argument that having an 11th team on the grid would make the circuit too crowded and represent certain safety issues. Yeah, Toto, you didn't seem to mind though when Manor was the 11th team knocking around at the back of the grid whilst using Mercedes kit, did you? Oh, I miss Manor. They were gone way too soon. And a new team on the grid, completely independent of Mercedes, absolutely scares the hell out of Toto, because he won't be able to have any influence of them. He won't be able to have any kind of politics there or say in anything and what they do. Christian Horner also expressed concerns about this, but this was mainly though on a financial footing, and he was more concerned about the prize money being split up and also how the prize money would have to be shared 11 ways rather than 10 ways. But I think there's something else at play here. With Ford supplying Red Bull engines from 2026 onwards, the last thing Ford want to do is have their arch rival, General Motors, to compete against in Formula One. So there is potential there for the eternal battle between Ford and General Motors to spill over into Formula One. Oh, the humanity and how dreadful that would be. God, these guys are so out of touch. Which will then cost Ford more money. And what we've seen from their previous endeavours in Formula One is that Ford just hate to spend money. And speaking of money, the entry requirements for Formula One are undeniably high, impossibly high. And I think this has been set up as some sort of Maginot line to block any kind of new team or organisation entering Formula One. So if Andretti meet the requirements, prove that they have the financial backing and the proof that they can pay the $200 million fee, and they can't get in, who can? And because of this $200 million wall which was set up to kind of block any new teams from coming in, if you did want to get into Formula One, you would have to then buy out an existing team or get into bed with an existing constructor like Haas did with Ferrari. This is certainly the easiest way to get into Formula One nowadays. And with all the rebranding and renaming of teams that we've seen in recent years, it really kind of dilutes and devalues the name and value of a team and what it represents. For example, AlphaTauri, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, these teams are not who they say they are. F1 fans are smarter than that, and their marketing team still haven't figured this out. Even Mercedes F1 aren't really Mercedes. Mercedes F1 is Team Brackley, who used to be Braun, Honda, and British American Racing. You know, the Mercedes HQ is in Stuttgart, and they use the Mercedes F1 operation in Brackley as just an advertising tool to push their range of hybrid cars. I mean, Red Bull used to be Stewart, and they were a brand new team led by Jackie Stewart and Paul Stewart, so you've got a legendary F1 name, backed by a massive car company like Ford, and they wanted to establish themselves as a new team. Sounds a bit similar to Andretti's situation, doesn't it? And then meanwhile, Andretti are Andretti. They are a proper salt-of-the-earth racing team. They have no interest in road cars themselves, and they go along with some of the legendary names in F1 such as Ferrari, McLaren and Williams, and they can really make a name of themselves with this. You know, teams like Ferrari, McLaren or Williams, they're in F1 for the long haul no matter what. They're racing teams. If the economy just went tits up, they can't just pull out of the sport because it doesn't financially suit them, because this is what they do. Unlike massive names we've seen in F1 such as Toyota, BMW or Honda, they just pull out of the sport as soon as it isn't economically viable for them anymore, and then they just go back to knocking out their road cars and pretending their involvement in F1 never existed. But just now to spin this round back onto Andretti, because they face a truly monumental task if their application is accepted, and a task that they haven't faced before. In all the series they currently race in, Andretti use a stock chassis, which is exactly the same as all the other teams use. In F1, Andretti will have to build their own car completely from the ground up. Now, they have the facilities to do this, and I'm sure they have the know-how and all the means to do it, the money as well, but it still needs to be competitive, and I think this is going to be an enormous test on them. If or when Andretti's application is confirmed, I'm sure we're going to start to see Andretti start to pick names out of the existing crop of teams. They'll start to bring in some big names who can build the car and help grow the team and just point it in the right direction. And also, they might even start integrating figures from other racing series in the United States. But everything up to this point now, they've talked the talk, and now they need to walk the walk. And they've just been building this up so much that they have to deliver. But F1 and the FIA need to consider the broader state of the sport, I think, because it's currently riding the crest of this amazing wave due to the increase in F1's global popularity. But I don't think there's any guarantees that it's going to stay this way. With the world economy looking very dodgy at the moment, Drive to Survive on Netflix receiving some not so great reviews recently, especially with the last series, and the paywall that's in front of F1, whether that's live events or watching it on TV, is increasing more and more each year. You never know, the bottom could easily fall out of the market. And this is why I like the idea of having Andretti on the grid, because they're a racing team, and if the chips are down, they're not just going to bugger off like other teams have done in the past. I mean, from a fan perspective, it would be absolutely fascinating and very intriguing to see this new team on the grid, some new faces, maybe even some returning faces too. 2 extra seats on the grid, a new livery. We might finally see that massive Coca-Cola, Pepsi, KFC or McDonald's livery that people have wanted to see for years. It's all so exciting, and I'm sure no doubt as well that teamwear might be made by Under Armour as well. But we can all only hope that Andretti makes some good decisions when it comes to their driver lineup, because there's been some rumours and murmurs around Colton Herta being linked to a seat at Andretti if it does actually come up. And I don't blame them, because everything is unknown to them. So for Herta, who currently races with Andretti in the States, to have him in the car as a known entity, that's just got to be a bonus for them. But also, the more Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, Fred Vasseur, Stefano Domenicali just bitch and moan and complain about the thought of an 11th team entering the sport, I think this enables more people to want it to happen. And I think if you support Andretti coming into the sport, that is almost like a protest against the current political hierarchy in F1. So there we go. Now we just need to find another team to fill that final 12th spot on the grid, and we're sorted. We're away. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a like if you enjoyed the video. I'm Paul, and we'll see you again soon.